Give it up for Wendy Vidlock.
Well, thank you, Jesse. Yay. You know, I just have to say, Jesse, your performance at the Crestone Poetry Fest was my takeaway. It was awesome. And I was so delighted to hear from you for this event, and so delighted that, that you invited me to join you all tonight. So thank you. This is one of the really cool things that poetry does, is it brings people together. It's one of its kind of magical little underneath things that, you know, we think it's all about, you know, struggling with the word all the time. But, you know, poetry sneaks up from behind and creates community and friendship. And it's one of the really awesome things that really dawned on me when we moved to Colorado 25 years ago with the poetry community here. Rosemary, part of that Western Colorado gathering of poets. Gary, that was a beautiful reading. Thank you so much for that. One of the things I just want to say about Coyote is that as the sort of, you know, manifest destiny thing was happening and they were shooting Coyote by the thousands, Coyote responded by producing more pups. So that the more that they were killed, the more that they evened their numbers up. And that is some powerful medicine right there. Because, I mean, wherever the arts are, Coyote seems to go. And growing up with, in Southwestern, you know, USA, the one thing you could always count on were crows and coyote. And I could never understand, you know, this fear. I understand for farmers and that sort of thing. But there's it's always been something just sacred about coyote. And I wanted to recommend a book by Lewis Hyde. It's called Trickster Makes This World. And what he does is he goes, you know, all over these cultures and shows how coyote makes this world. Basically the same kind of story that you gave us, Gary. So thank you for that. I wanted to start with an invocation tonight to the moon, because we're all a little bit under the influence of the moon. And in particular, because it's been a very strange week. And what I've been thinking a lot about language, and not just language, but the impulse behind language. And this week, particularly with the president contracting COVID, it's been a real challenge for a lot of us not to gloat. You know, like saying, well, he had it coming. You know, this is just, you know, a case of instant karma. But I've been really trying not to engage in that kind of inner thought, because I think it's really important that we sort of, you know, rise above. And so this importance with language really comes tumbling back down at me. So we go from something, you know, topical that we're all just sort of, you know, surrounded by, into the sort of enchantment that we can get from poetry. So we're going to start with a little invocation to the moon and that crazy old loon, William Butler Yeats. This is an early poem of his. It goes like this. Where the wave of moonlight glosses the dim gray sands with light, we foot it all the night, weaving olden dances, mingling hands and mingling glances, till the moon has taken flight, while the world is full of troubles and anxious in its sleep. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, for the world's more full of weeping than you'll understand. The chickadee is all about truth. The finch is hardly a token. The albatross is always an omen. The kestrel, mental. The lark, luck. The grouse is dance. The goose is quest. The need for speed is given the peregrine, and the dove has been blessed with the feminine. The quail is word, the power of word, and culpability. The crane is the dean of poetry. The swift is the means to agility. The waxwing, mere civility. The sparrow, a nod to working class nobility. The puffin is the brother of laughter and prayer. The starling, the student of Baudelaire. The mockingbird is the sound of redress. The grackle, the uncle of excess. The flicker is rhythm. The ostrich is earth. The bluebird implies somebody's birth. The oriole is the end and the start. The magpie, prince of the dark arts. The swallow is home, shelter, and protection. The vulture, the priest of purification. The heron, a font of self-reflection. The swisher belongs to the fairy realm. Resourcefulness is the cactus wren. The pheasant is sex. The chicken is egg. The quail is the call for humility. The canary, the bringer of ecstasy. The martin is peace. The stork is release. The swan is the mother of cool discretion. The loon is the watery voice of the moon. The owl's the keeper of secrets, grief, and fresh fallen snow. And the crow has the bones of the ancestral soul. So I've been thinking also a lot about this thing we call associative orientation, which is just sort of a fancy way of saying that your mind, skips all over the place. So if you think of a certain word, say crow or coyote or sand, then our minds and our sort of perception of that starts to go into all these other directions. And we have all these associations and all these sort of relationships with all of those memories that we have associated with that word. And so what's really interesting to me about language and particularly about words is that they're universal and yet profoundly personal. And so I had to write this little one the other day. I was doing some yard work and pushing a wheelbarrow up a hill. And so I call it the wheel. So there I was pushing a wheelbarrow up a hill, thinking a little about Sisyphus, a little about the glazed rainwater, a little about Monty Python rounding up the not yet dead. And I wondered, what do others think about when pushing a wheelbarrow up a hill? Ramming into a rock and nearly spilling into the wheelbarrow, I've come to believe most people are likely concentrating on the fucking wheel. So I recently had opportunity to go down to Tucson again, where I grew up. My father died recently, and I have been really sort of going back in time and seeing my father before he was my father. They say they get to know people better after they're dead, and I think it's really true of our parents. Um, and so I had to write this little, I had to share with you this little thing that came to me when I was down in Tucson. He was 95 when he died, my dad. So he lived a good long life. Hey, Dad, remember the time you caught me writing? You asked what I was doing. I said I was writing a letter to Graham and Grandpa Joe. I was really writing a poem. And this is a little one called, These Are the Things I Think I Know. Because, you know, the older I get, the more I think, boy, we really just don't know much at all. The older I get, the more I realize I don't know much, the more I realize we don't know much. So I tried to sort of compile the things that I feel that I do know. These are the things I think I know. There's nothing more quiet than the snow. If it isn't a bridge, it's a puppet show. There are single cells which are intertwined. There are yogis who have lost their minds. You are not one. You are not a twin. Not every horse has your medicine. There are towers that have no sense of time. There are those who will not toe the line. The end will begin and breaks from the start. Beware the ram without an art. There are visions that never meet the eye. There are bats to remind us that we're blind. The breeze that changes everything will rarely stop to leave her name. There are words that do not coincide. There are people who cannot cross the divide. The weight that you were born to bear will glean from the soul and take to the air. All poverties and sorrows know the kernel left inside the bowl, what to smash and what to hone, the terra firm and the Goldilocks zone. And I think I'm gonna close with a poem by a poet that I just recently discovered. Her name is Diana Dur Tessine, and she's an Argentinian poet. And boy, this is a wonderful poem. And when I found this poem, I went and did all kinds of research on her and discovered that, well, I discovered the poet of a lifetime. Anyway, this one is called Shifting the Sun. When your father dies, say the Irish, you lose your umbrella against the world. May his son be your light, say the Armenians. When your father dies, say the Welsh, you sink a foot deeper into the earth. May you inherit his light, say the Armenians. When your father dies, say the Canadians, you run out of excuses. May you inherit his son, say the Armenians. When your father dies, say the Indians, He comes back as the thunder. May you inherit his light, say the Armenians. When your father dies, say the Russians, he takes your childhood with him. May you inherit his light, say the Armenians. When your father dies, say the British, you join the club you vowed you wouldn't. May you inherit his son, say the Armenians. When your father dies, say the Armenians, your son shifts forever, and you walk in his light. Thank you all so much.